Yeah, welcome everybody. I think we've got a few people coming online now. And as the title says, this is the ISO 42001 new AI management system standard. And we're just going to take you through the process and benefits of AI governance and certification. So this is with CFE Cert, who are currently going through the process to be eligible to audit for ISO 42001. But we can talk more about that shortly. We'll give everybody just a few more minutes to come online. I think we've got, we're coming in thick and fast now, so that's good. I think there's about 200 potential attendees, so that's going to be a great audience. Thank you very much. We'll give it a couple more minutes and then we'll crack on. So we've got about an hour, and the presentation will take around about 45 minutes, 50 minutes. And that'll give us 10 to 15 minutes Q&A at the end of it, if you have any questions. If you do have any during the presentation, feel free to put them in the comments, the chat, and we'll either pick them up as we go along with the team in the background, or I'll address them at the end. So we'll just give a couple more minutes and we'll get cracking. Is it just 1 minute past 4 now? So right, we'll make a start. So here we go. You know, everybody's looking forward to it. So CFE Cert, great organisation, basically working around the world and providing many services. And it includes their gap analysis, training, audit, certification in areas information security, AI management, compliance, business continuity, IT service management, quality management, GDPR, and personal data management systems. So great organisation, and I'm very happy to be part of the team presenting this webinar today. So as we get into it, we're going to explore 42001 certification process and its significant benefits for organisations. The certification focuses on establishing effective AI governance, ensuring ethical and responsible use of AI technologies, which, as we're now becoming aware, is absolutely key to the use of AI and developing AI and etc. Before we start, I'll give you a little introduction to me. I was in the Royal Air Force for 12 years, came out in 2000, and gradually worked my way through to sort of an information security role, working in charity organisations and then a credit reference agency, where I was lucky enough to create, implement and manage an ISO 27001 environment, and also PCI DSS with a little bit of 22301, ISO 22301, which is business continuity. And it was through that process that I was sort of encouraged to become a consultant, which I did in 2010, and worked all the way through for various consultancy organisations until 2023, where I went self-employed. And this is part of a partnership between myself and CFE Cert that brought me here today. So I've recently added AI compliance to my skill set, if you like. So sat and passed courses at MIT, and also the lead auditor and lead implementer for ISO 42001. So I think it builds basically on the previous experience with 27001 and 22301, and just adds to that basically. So today, over the next kind of 45, 50 minutes, we're going to go through this agenda. So just talking about preparation and the initial assessment, the certification audit, and what we're going to do after the audit, post-certification maintenance, and then initial benefits of 42001 and the ongoing benefits of 42001. So ISO 42001 itself, if you're not already aware, it's an international standard that provides requirements for establishing implementing and maintaining and continually improving an AI management system, or AIMS. It's designed to help organizations responsibly develop, use, and govern AI systems while ensuring compliance with ethical, legal, and regulatory requirements. The standard also outlines best practice for AI risk management, transparency, and accountability, and also performance evaluation. By following ISO 42001, organizations can enhance trust in their AI systems, also mitigate potential risks, and align AI governance with business objectives and strategic objectives as well. That's kind of key when we talk about objectives. It applies to all types of organizations, including technology firms, government agencies, and financial institutions, pretty much anybody that uses, obviously, AI systems. And CFE Cert, like I say, will be able to provide ISO 42001 certification services from around about June. So feel free to speak to our sales team with regards to that. And at this point, I'd like to start a call. So for what we've got online now, 21 people, 21 attendees. If you'd like to just let me know if the organization that you work for is currently 27001 certified, that would be fantastic. The reason I mention that is ISO 27001 and that ISO 42001 are very, very similar. And there's various quotes of percentage numbers going around, which I don't particularly like to use. But the reason I mention that is if you currently have 27001 certification, you're already part of the way there for ISO 42001 compliance. And the great thing about ISO 42001 is it's a good stepping stone. It's a great stepping stone for EU AI Act compliance, which is now law. So the preparation and initial assessment. It's crucial for successful ISO 42001 certification. And this phase involves getting stakeholders involved. So that's both internal and external. And conducting a thorough assessment of risks, current practices, and developing essential governance policies. So like with pretty much any standard, ISO 42001 is fairly document heavy. But if you have 27001 already, then a lot of those documents may just need a little bit of a tweak. And I'd also suggest in the early stages of preparing for an ISO 42001 environment to perform what I call an AI amnesty. And this was mentioned on LinkedIn a little while ago as well, to basically identify what AI solutions are currently being used by staff. So having a safe place, if you like, for staff to tell you, the management, what AI tools are being used. And then everybody can be in that discussion to decide what's approved, going down the line. So that's a key kind of factor, basically. And when we talk about getting relevant parties on board, it's essential for essential for ensuring a shared commitment to AI governance. And obviously it includes executives, compliance teams, technical personnel who will contribute to the successful certification process. And one element that is often overlooked, I think, when we talk about AI compliance and AI management systems is health and safety. Now, you might wonder why I mentioned that. The goal of ISO 42001 and the EU AI Act is ultimately to prevent harm to individuals, groups of individuals and societies. So it makes sense to have some form of health and safety representative when we create this environment. And ISO 42001 itself consists of 7 mandatory clauses for formal certification. In other words, to establish an AI management system. These include Clause 4, and this is where the similarity will start to kind of reveal itself. So the clauses and numbers and titles reflect, in fact, mirror 27001. So the clauses include Clause 4, which is the context of the organization, and this identifies external and internal AI-related factors. Clause 5, leadership, which obviously ensures commitment from top management. And then we have Clause 6, which is planning, which defines AI objectives and risk management strategies. Clause 7 is support, which covers resources, training, and documentation. Clause 8 is operation, which includes AI risk assessments and impact evaluations, so AI system impact assessments, which is a separate discussion altogether. And then clause 9, which is performance evaluation, and that involves monitoring and audits. And then finally, clause 10, which is improvement, and that ensures continuous enhancement of AI governance. And all these components work together to create a structured approach for responsible AI development and planning. And you'll recognise those from what's commonly termed as the plan, do, check, act wheel. So the plan is clauses 4, 5, 6, and 7. The do is clause 8, check is clause 9, and the act process is clause 10. So you'll start to understand now where the similarities are with 27001. So a key part of the standard is risk assessment, risk management, and the risk assessment activity identifies potential vulnerabilities related to AI systems. So you perform a gap analysis, and that compares current practices against 42001 requirements, highlighting areas needing improvement to align with the certification standards. Excuse me. And again, there's a lot of synergy between the risk assessment activities with 27001 and ISO 42001. So you can begin to kind of understand that the activities that you're probably doing already with 27001 are going to help create that 42001 environment. And like we said before, 42001 aligns with global AI regulations, ethical guidelines, and helping organisations meet compliance requirements. Many countries are developing AI regulations focusing on transparency, fairness, and accountability, but this standard provides a structured framework to ensure AI systems adhere to these principles. And by implementing ISO 42001, organisations can demonstrate responsible AI governance to regulators, auditors, and stakeholders. It also facilitates compliance with data protection laws such as the GDPR, by ensuring proper AI risk assessments and documentation. This proactive approach reduces legal risks, helps prevent fines, and enhances the credibility of AI-driven organisations, which at the minute I think is pretty much every organisation, basically. And obviously, we mentioned before, it's quite document-heavy, so we're going to be developing policies, objectives, and applying controls to reduce risks. So you must establish clear AI governance policies and objectives that address the identified risks from the gap analysis. So anything that's not at an acceptable risk level, we need to address the risks, essentially. And then implementing the controls that are included in ISO 42001, as opposed to where 27001 has 27002 for the controls description. ISO 42001 includes both the annex with the controls in and also the controls guidance description as well. So effectively 2 standards in 1, which is great. And organisations also need to define AI objectives, obviously establishing a leadership commitment and integrating AI risk management into business processes. Organisations must document AI policies, conduct AI system impact assessments, and implement monitoring mechanisms. Regular audits and performance evaluations help ensure compliance and continual improvement. So looking at that plan, do, check, act wheel again. Training employees on AI governance and aligning AI strategies with regulatory requirements are also critical. Seeking external certification can further validate compliance and enhance trust in AI-driven services. So obviously speaking to the likes of CFE Cert to certify your AI management system. And training employees for AI literacy, which is what the EUA Act calls it, is now a part of the law that's been brought in, basically, and that became active on the 2nd of February. So organisations must ensure that their employees have the sufficient knowledge for them to be able to use AI systems effectively, basically. And then we're setting up the monitoring and documentation procedures, which is obviously a critical required step, mandatory step. And the effective monitoring and documentation procedures are necessary to track compliance and performance, obviously. This includes establishing metrics, reporting mechanisms, and maintaining records of governance activities. And all this is fed back to the top management, the senior management, executive management teams, executive leadership teams. So they're all involved in the process, and they get clear sight of anything that needs attention, essentially. And next. And when we look at the certification audit, it's a critical step in the 42001 process. It basically evaluates the organisation's adherence to the established standards and policies. The overall process consists of several stages, including internal audits and external evaluations. The certification audit, if you don't already know, from 27001, it mirrors that. And it comprises a stage 1 documentation review, and this effectively gives the auditor a mind's eye view of what should be happening in the workplace. So they'll read through the mandatory documents, the policies, and get a view of what should be happening, basically. And then, presuming everything's in place, all the mandatory elements are in place, you're recommended to go forward for stage 2, the actual certification audit. And the auditor will then evaluate the knowledge that they've gained from the documentation to ensure it is actually being performed in the workplace. And sometimes this is on site and sometimes it's remote. So it's quite a good step to go through. Obviously, as part of any management system, we're looking at internal audits as well. And one of these has to occur before the external audit, the certification audit. So you conduct an internal audit to just basically assess compliance with 42001. So it's a fairly easy process to go through. And obviously the results from that audit will need to be reviewed and actioned if necessary, because it helps identify any non-conformities that need to be addressed prior to the official certification. And obviously records of any work that is performed, any change control, tickets or whatever needs to be done to follow that process through needs to be maintained as evidence as well. And obviously, as we're beginning to be aware, ISO 42001 standard is still relatively new, so it may be that your organisation doesn't have either skilled resource or anyone sufficiently independent of the Artificial Intelligent Management System, or AIMS, to perform the internal audit effectively. And that's exactly the same as 27001, obviously. The internal audit function need to be sufficiently sort of detached from the management system so they can audit it effectively. So a couple of options there. You can either train, obviously, suitable members of staff. Like say, if you've got an internal audit team already, you could maybe, get them on a course to make them aware, excuse me, or they could just, get to know ISO 42001 so they have sufficient knowledge to be able to audit it effectively. Or sometimes small and large organisations like to use external resource because there's a lot of power in an external voice, sometimes more so than an internal voice, unfortunately. And I've had experience of that myself, where I've tried to push through various initiatives from an internal perspective. And it was only when they were mentioned from somebody outside of the organisation that they actually started to be listened to. So it's very unfortunate, but it's obviously an advantage for us because we can, come in and help move these initiatives forward from an external perspective. And when we talk about training, like I say, it's absolutely critical now because it's required from the EUI Act perspective, which is now law. And it's critical to ensure that employees understand ISO 42001 and their role in maintaining compliance. So they don't need to know it back to front. I think it's fair to say any standard isn't a great read. You need to be very committed to, get to know it back to front. But as long as they're aware of the essence of 42001 and what it means to them and their workplace, that's fine. But all this obviously enhances the organisation's overall readiness for the certification audit as well, and beyond. Obviously, there's an array of courses available from free to paid for. Obviously, what you choose to do will be determined by the organisation you work for, but please ensure that you get what you need. Perform due diligence on providers of courses to ensure you're going to get value for money. So I'm a big lover of anything due diligence-wise. I think it's a great activity for any organisation to perform for a lot of things, including, ISO 42001. Excuse me. And then when we prepare for the external audit, obviously we need accurate documentation, up-to-date records, like I say, so any activity that's generated any documentation, make sure that's maintained and up to date. And then records of training sessions as well. And like I say, that could be an internal member of staff kind of training people from their knowledge, or it could be externally provided training courses, just to make sure that the records of attending that training and obviously passing any exams, if that's the case, is maintained and kept. Also records of policies, risk assessments, and obviously training sessions demonstrate compliance. And it also requires that all the mandatory elements are in place. And like I say, that's clauses 4 to 10 from the standard. So as long as those are in place, you'll be ready for stage 1, basically. And then the accredited certification body, like I say, CFE Cert, will be ready to perform ISO 42001 certifications around about June. But the first step in the certification process it basically assesses the organisation's compliance with ISO 42001 standard and determines whether the certification will be granted. A top tip there is when you start your ISO 42001 journey for certification, just make sure that you engage and discuss the dates. If you've got a specific date in mind, make sure that you're discussing that with the certification body, because if you leave that discussion too late, your date may need to shift because of the auditor's diaries being busy. So I always recommend engaging with or choosing a certification body very early on in this project, just to make sure that your perceived dates or your desired dates can be met by the certification body. Particularly, I think, because there's a lot of talk, not just me thinking this, but there's a lot of talk in the AI compliance sort of world that certification 2 for 2001 is going to get very busy because we're already seeing it. We're seeing AI-specific questions appearing in lots of due diligence forms from higher up companies asking their service providers to provide responses. And I have heard of ISO 42001 alignment being required in a recent tender. So an invitation to tender included that wording to align to 42001. And if that follows ISO 27001, we saw that around about 2008 where alignment was requested. And then very soon afterwards, it was basically saying if you're not certified to 27001, you can't respond to this bid. And the thinking currently is that ISO 42001 is going to go the same way. So it's going to get very busy. And we talk about core certificate post-certification maintenance. So once certified, obviously maintaining ISO 42001 compliance is essential, as with any other management system. And this phase includes ongoing monitoring and continuous improvement processes to ensure that AI governance practices remain effective. As mentioned, because most standards are grouped or harmonized, some post-maintenance activities can be combined. However, careful consideration needs to be made for areas that may appear to be the same as 27001, such as risk assessment. Whilst it is possible to combine the two activities into one integrated risk management process, the scope of the two areas may be different. Also, as with ISO 27001 and the associated ISO 31001 risk management standard, ISO 42001 has ISO 23894 for AI risk management. So there's a lot of numbers there, but 23894 is a great document to read for anything risk management activity-wise for artificial intelligence. Excuse me. That is water, by the way. It's not tea or wine. So processes for ongoing monitoring, obviously regular audits, and this can be internal and external, performance reviews and policy updates. And don't forget, this includes your third-party service providers, as we mentioned before, due diligence. So a robust process will need to be created or added to an existing process to ensure that your third parties maintain their compliance with your demands. And that includes regular reviews to ensure that's the case. Specifically, clause 8.1 in both this ISO 42001 standard and actually 27001 is pretty much exactly the same. It demands this, and there's three controls within 42001. So A10.1, A10.3, and A10.4. And they help a little bit with managing third-party risk. ISO 27001 has a total of 5 controls, and like I say, the same mandatory clause. But if these don't provide enough detail, I'm a bit of a fan of the third-party service provider management areas or requirements within the payment card industry data security standard, or PCI DSS. And specifically, that's 12.8.1, 12.8.2, 12.8.3, 12.8.4, and yes, you guessed it, 12.8.5. So if you find that there's not enough detail within either 27001 or 42001, you can go outside of that and use, processes from other standards if you wish, or if you've got one already, just use that. It's very much well worth focusing on this because third-party risk is a priority item nowadays. Obviously, we all know, and we've all heard the media reports of various attacks, even recently, and quite a lot of these originate from third-party risk or third-party element. So yeah, it's well worth, focusing on that. At the time, rattle through. Continuous improvement, it's obviously clause 10. And this is key to maintaining ISO 42001 certification. So organisations should foster a culture of innovation and adaptability, and obviously making necessary adjustments based on monitoring results and feedback. And again, you can perform an AI amnesty again at this stage, just to make sure that no shadow AI, as they call it, has crept in. So yeah, continuous improvement is essential. So the initial benefits, it brings immediate advantages, including establishing a robust AI governance framework, but more kind of visible advantages, enhancing customer trust and improving overall risk management strategies. So these are the early sort of quick wins. And then we look at comprehensive AI governance, so the certification, ethical standards in AI. So there's a lot of talk about the word ethical when we talk about AI, and then the importance of AI governance. So ISO 42001 certification provides organizations with a structured approach to AI governance. It ensures ethical standards are upheld in AI development and deployment, which is increasingly important in today's AI landscape. So when we talk about deploying AI systems, pretty much every company is doing that now. Particularly when we talk about ChatGPT, and then Copilot's embedded into Office 365. We've got Gemini. We've also got tools on people's phones, and that's before we start getting into the specific AI systems that address very kind of niche areas, such as contract review for the legal systems, chatbots, etc., etc. The list goes on. And then obtaining ISO 42001 certification, it basically signals to customers that an organization is committed to responsible AI use. This again fosters trust and confidence, which can lead to increased customer loyalty and retention, and obviously increased in sales as well and revenue, which is a good thing. Organizations should also see a reduction in the amount of due diligence requests, from a reduction in numbers of questions to some activity actually no longer being required. And the reason I mention that is we saw exactly the same, or we do see exactly the same with ISO 27001. So once an organization gets that certificate, the upstream or downstream providers take it as comfort that it's independently, externally audited, so that sometimes they no longer perform either as much or any due diligence compared to before the certificate was issued, basically. And it's going to be the same with ISO 42001, and it already is. I know of some organizations that do have 42001 certification, and they say they don't get as many due diligence questions with regards to AI. They still get some, because I think it's still, AI use or mainstream AI. AI's been around since the 60s, so it's nothing particularly new. But what I call mainstream AI, when ChatGPT was released, it's I've forgotten where I was going with that. Sorry. Due diligence, yes. So it's everywhere. So due diligence is still going to be performed just to get that reassurance that companies are using it ethically and safely and less risky, basically. So I think the opportunity to remove the need for due diligence isn't quite there yet, but eventually I think it will in some cases. Then we talk about enhanced risk management. So the certification process, basically, as we've talked, enhances an organization's ability to identify, assess, and mitigate risks associated with AI technologies. So it's a proactive approach, and it helps reduce potential issues before they arise. It'll also ensure that third-party risks are well managed, reducing the potential for disruptive events occurring. So in exactly the same way as other risk management processes, AI risks are identified. But we need to be a little bit careful, because when we talk about AI, we obviously talk about the process to use AI uses a lot of algorithms. For instance, ChatGPT has, I think, 36 algorithms. Now, normally you would risk assess each one of those. But with ChatGPT being kind of a closed system, you won't get access to that. And that's where the third-party service provider due diligence comes in, because you would want to make sure that if one of those or some of those algorithms change, it could affect the output from your prompts. So you need to have a process in place to manage the service provider around that and get notified if any of the algorithms change. And this is the same for any AI system. You need to make sure that you're made aware if an algorithm changes, and you need to have a process in place to test the new algorithms to make sure that the output that you expect still remains valid. Excuse me. We've covered some of these off, so the benefits of ongoing ISO 42001 certification. Long-term advantages that contribute to the organization's success in a competitive marketplace. So like I said, ongoing reduction in due diligence, which obviously saves staff time so they can concentrate on other activities. Increase in sales. It will get to a point where companies that don't have ISO 42001 certification start to lose out. Not so much right now, but again, that is coming. So there's a lot of ongoing benefits, not least of which is increased revenue, which every company loves. So competitive advantage, that's one of the key areas when we talk about ISO 42001 certification, because it can provide a competitive edge by differentiating organizations in the marketplace. It demonstrates a commitment to ethical AI practices, which can attract new customers and partners. So like I say, as part of the tender process, your ITTs, RFPs, for instance, they're very soon going to include ISO 42001. That's the prediction. And I think probably towards the end of the year, maybe Q3. And like I said, there's already AI-specific questions appearing in due diligence forms, a lot of them. And the ITT's invitation to tenders requesting alignment. So like I say, it's going to reflect what we saw with ISO 27001 around about 2008, 2009. So operational efficiency. So it'll bring operational efficiency. It'll streamline operations. It says there, improved efficiency and enhanced productivity. Because you've got clear processes and responsibilities. So members of staff know what they need to do and know what they can't do equally. And they just know what they're doing, essentially. So this leads to improved efficiency and productivity across the organization, and reduces and removes actually the kind of unknown, because staff will be aware of what they should be doing. So instead of kind of scratching around searching for a solution, it's right there. And it makes sure staff are fully aware of their responsibilities, basically to support organizational's strategic goals and help drive the company forward. And also certification basically just encourages organizations to innovate while ensuring compliance with regulatory standards. And that balance helps organizations stay ahead in what we now know is a rapidly evolving technological landscape, basically. So it's not going away. There was I know a few people that when, like I say, mainstream ChatGPT, etc. was released, they didn't believe it would be a thing. They're probably eating the words right now. It's definitely a thing, and it ain't going away. So in conclusion, it's an essential step for organizations, basically, looking to implement effective AI governance. The process not only enhances compliance and risk management, but also provides numerous benefits that can drive long-term success. So in summary, organizations really should follow these 5 steps to ensure robust AIMS, or artificial intelligence management system. So basically adopt, obviously, ISO 42001 for governance, basically ensure that your organization is aligned with global AI best practices by implementing 42001. Strengthen AI governance, manage risks effectively, and enhance compliance within international regulations like the EU AI Act. Like I said before, ISO 42001 aligns very, very well with the EU AI Act. So that really kicks in about 18 months' time. There's some elements that have already become active, such as the prohibitive AI systems. And like I say, at the very same day that came in, it was the AI literacy, and there's various other elements being phased in. But like I say, ISO 42001 aligns very well with the Act, so it's well worth looking at that as well. And then conduct an ISO 42001 pre-audit. As with any management system, it's usually good practice to do this. So you assess your current AI systems against ISO 42001 and the EU Act, and identify gaps, mitigate risks, and build a roadmap for compliance to ensure responsible AI deployment. And then you encourage transparency and accountability. So you implement policies that improve AI system explainability, fairness, and ethical decision-making, strengthen public and stakeholder trust by embedding transparency and accountability in all AI operations. You invest in AI risk management and monitoring, so you proactively monitor AI performance, assess impact risks, and integrate continuous improvement processes by staying ahead of regulatory changes and establishing a robust AI risk management framework. And finally, partner with AI governance experts. So you work with AI compliance specialists to navigate ISO 42001 certification and regulatory requirements, and leverage expert insights to develop a sustainable, ethical, and compliant AI strategy. And sometimes this could be AI experts, AI compliance experts, basically sitting on the board or attending management meetings to provide input from an external perspective. So it's really good to keep that view from the outside. And I think we've got some questions already, but I'll come on to those in just a second. And obviously from a CFE cert perspective, try and follow us on various social media platforms. You can see them there. And we have these upcoming courses available. So if you want to get some details on those, email the email addresses either for certification services or training services. And that concludes the presentation. So thank you very much for everybody who's attended and taken the time out of the day to watch this. I hope you enjoyed it. And I think we have a few questions. So I've got one from, I hope I pronounced your name right, Samir Abi Abdallah asks, can you advise on some examples, or can you provide some examples of KPIs for the artificial intelligence management system? So that could be, simple one could be the amount of hours saved by using an AI management system. Another KPI could be customer feedback. It could be increase in sales. There's various others. And another one from Samir, you're getting them in. He or she says, certification companies are accredited now to certify according to ISO 42001. What is the accreditation standard? I don't quite know what you mean there, Samir. The accreditation is to ISO 42001, so you would be accredited to ISO 42001, and you would get a certificate in the same way that you would get a certificate for 27001 certification. And then a question from Dida. Again, hopefully I'm pronouncing your name correctly. And they say, as Gen AI is still an emerging field, are you seeing frequent updates to this standard? What is the expected frequency for updates, and how shall we loop? How shall we be in the loop for those? So, yes, Gen AI or kind of new wave or modern AI is very much still an emerging field. And this standard, ISO 42001, has just been released. So I don't expect any updates for a while. I'm not too sure what the expected frequency. I know 27001 went from 2013 to 2022. So what's that, 9 years? Because ISO 42001 is very much based or reflects a lot of ISO can I say that right? ISO 42001 reflects ISO 27001 quite heavily with a couple of extra bits and pieces. It's basically coming from a very mature standard, as in 27001. So as a standard, as far as a standard goes, it's a very, very good standard to start off with. And I don't think it's missing anything critical. I think the only thing that might change it, obviously, other than the standard frequency, may be changes in the environment. We've seen that a lot with third-party risk. So with the increase in third-party risk and attacks via third parties, you can see standards being updated to introduce either requirements in the case of the PCI DSS or controls and clauses, not so much clauses, controls, when we think about the standards. Like I said, because 42001 is coming from a very mature 27001 standard, it's already good in that respect. With regards to keeping in the loop for updates, it would just be keeping an eye on the BSI website because they're obviously custodians of the standard, so they would know. And obviously speaking to your external AI compliance experts such as ourselves, and we would deliver updates if they're relevant to your organisation if you become a customer of CFE Cert. I think that's it for questions. More than happy to answer. Oh, there's some in the chat, just bear with me. There's just a couple of comments. Yeah, that concludes the presentation and the Q&A. So again, thank you very much for attending. And if nobody else has any questions, we can probably finish early and give you 10 minutes of your day back, or possibly 15. Unless there's anyone from the CFE Cert back-end team that wants to add anything. No. All right. Thanks very much for attending, and we'll close the meeting there. And hopefully, you'll be in touch with the sales team at CFE Cert to discuss any AI compliance requirements that you may have, either now or in the future. But thank you.